As if 2019 wasn't bad enough for Pope Francis, it ended with a papal slap heard round the world. Bill Gates, Bono, and George Soros are all working to save the planet. Do they care about poverty as much as we do? Plus, George Weigel tells us which websites it's okay for us to visit in 2020. All that and more tonight from the editor's desk. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt coming to you once again from the offices of the Remnant newspaper. Happy New Year to you all. Before we get started, just a quick word to all of those families in our audience who've been impacted now by the situation in Iraq. I know no one knows what's going to happen there. We're all concerned, but whatever you think of this decision, and I don't believe that it bodes well. In fact, I'm concerned about Trump's re-election after this, but whatever you think of it, we need to pull together and just pray for all those young men and women now who are involved and all those families who are involved and who may in some way be in harm's way. Please, God, may that not happen, and may God bless and may protect all of our friends and families and all the servicemen who are involved now in this part of the world that's just out of control. I mean, I'm just not sure what we're doing over there anymore, you know. And we said so back in 2003. It's never going to end, you know. But in any case, the young people who are over there, our heart goes out to all of them. We're praying for you. So stay strong. So these airstrikes or drone strikes in Iraq have pushed the other big story off the headlines, and I don't really need to belabor that. It happened last week. Everyone was already talking about it, and it is what it is. It's it's embarrassing, it's cringeworthy, but it's pretty much par for the course with this pontificate. And it's all connected, I'm afraid. The constant papal scoldings, the name calling, the refusal of Francis to answer, critics such as Raymond Cardinal Burke, important men of the church. He just refuses, he just gets angry, won't answer them, ignores them, a solemn papal silence for Vigano, and getting miffed at the mere sight of Catholic devotion, even in children. Do you remember this one? Yeah, it's incredible. And I really think that Francis is more or less, the reason we see this, he's pretending. He's pretending to be something that he's not. I insist, I get in a lot of trouble for calling him, Your Holiness, the Holy Father, but you know what? He hates that, because in Francis's mind, he's not the holy leader of a holy church. He's a politician. He's a political activist, leading a humanitarian organization called the Christian Catholic Community, or whatever they're calling it these days, So last month, for example, we played that clip, once again, of Francis with Bono Vox, from the Irish rock band U2. And people might say, well, that's a strange partnership, and it is. Let's talk about that for a minute. You don't have to be a traditional Catholic to wonder about that partnership. The Pope and the pro-abortion, pro-gay marriage rock star, Irish rock star. A guy who for decades, I think about 4 decades now, has been using his rock star mega status to undermine just about everything about Christian morality. Back in 1978, for example, U2 famously pioneered the whole condom distribution thing by playing Liberty Hall in Ireland to support the free distribution of condoms in Catholic Ireland. At that point, it was still a Catholic country. Huge supporters of the Irish Family Planning Association, Bono helped to repeal the 8th Amendment, for Pete's sakes, thus legalizing abortion on demand, and he used his status to promote Ireland's legalization of gay marriage, of course. So here's the question. When it's so obvious what he is, why is the Pope out there on TV hugging Bono? Why was Bono of U2 selected by the Vatican to be the voice of the encyclical Laudato Si?
This year, Pope Francis called on humanity to change our own fate. Laudato Si was his rallying cry. An encyclical grounded in facts and rooted in faith. Laudato Si is an urgent appeal to care for and protect our planet, to honor God by honoring his most spectacular creation, to unite in the effort to save our common home.
I mean, surely the Vatican knows that when Bono founded his organization called One, which he says on his website is, quote, a political constituency for the development of the UN Millennial Development Goals, otherwise known as the Sustainable Development Goals, pro-abortion, pro-contraception. The Vatican must know that when Bono set this up, he partnered with none other than the pro-abort, rabid pro-contraception, pro-population controllers Bill and Melinda Gates, George Soros, and Bob Geldof, for Pete's sakes, to get the thing off the ground. Bono is partnering with them. He's an important ally to all of these men. So when Bono is seen hobnobbing in the Vatican with Pope Francis, this is not some anomaly. This is not some field trip. It's not an accident. This is carefully scripted theater, carefully scripted propaganda, because they know it works. Yeah, Bono he's one of the 6 globalist activists, including Kofi Annan, who was chosen by Soros himself to appear in the promotional video now for Open Society Foundation. That's Soros' foundation. Bono was chosen to speak up for George Soros. And then, of course, the foundation also funded Ireland's abortion legalizing referendum. Check this out.
He's a giant. He walks very small, careful steps. So people don't hear him going boom, boom, boom. And actually, I think he's quite shy.
So you and I, we may be tempted to dismiss Bono as a self-absorbed, self-important, has-been idiot rock star from the 80s, right? But Francis doesn't think so. George Soros doesn't think so. The president of the European Council doesn't think so. Here's Bono with all of them. Check this out.
Did you enjoy yesterday afternoon the session on?
Intellectually, yes. A chapter on short term and longer term and so on. That was a lot of it mixed.
So what's happening here? Honestly, seriously, ask yourself, what is happening here? What is this? What's happening is that these guys, these globalists, these UN folks, they need for Francis to take down the traditional Catholic Church, prohibiting the most effective means of global depopulation on the planet: contraception, abortion, and gay marriage. You see, they need Francis to get rid of those obstacles that come from the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church has massive influence.
What this Pope sees is that if we are going to lift people out of poverty, you have to do the right thing for women. And so we have agreed at this point to disagree.
But that's a big problem for you, isn't it? Because actually, culturally, the difference that could be made if there was a change at the top of the Catholic Church would be huge, wouldn't it? Let's be blunt about it. It would be a really, really big change. And this Pope, in spite of some people's hopes that he would, has not made that change and doesn't look likely to.
Hasn't made that change yet, but I think these things take time.
I think there are still 2 billion Catholics in the world. If you're going to control the population, you need to have the Catholic Church shut up about contraception. And that's what this is all about. That's why Francis is their guy, is their ally. Let's not forget, the United Nations, this didn't have a chance in hell of actually amounting to much. It never would have happened as United Nations, or the Brotherhood of Men, as the Freemasons always like to call it. Never would have happened, never would have gotten off the ground without this. Paul VI removing his tiara, the symbol of his authority, the symbol of the Catholic monarch, if you will, ruling in the social kingship of Christ on this earth. You see, from this moment on, the ape of the mystical body of Christ, the New World Order, came alive. From this moment on, the Catholic Church surrendered. Because basically, if all religions are good, as Vatican II certainly implies, then who are you, or who am I, to insist on the moral teachings of our religion, especially when it interferes with ending world hunger, because we need to get rid of the surplus population so we can feed everybody. So who are we to insist that contraception is intrinsically evil or abortion is intrinsically evil? If our church is just another one of the church, and all churches are good, and everybody's church has got an opinion, but none is greater than the other. See, that's what Vatican II did for the greatest moral authority in the history of the world, the Catholic Church. It destroyed that moral authority. You see how it works? Ending hunger, ending climate change, and ending intolerance and poverty. Who but a bigot or a hater would possibly object to these things? You see, white has become black, black has become white. And with the hierarchy of the Catholic Church having essentially abandoned such notions as sin and hell and the 4 last things, The Catholics that are still traditionalists, that are still talking about the infallible teachings of the church, we're basically, as far as the left is concerned, the enemies are concerned, we're basically talking about the Easter Bunny here and mermaids when we object to contraception and abortion. While the adults and the good guys and the noble figures like Soros, Bono, and Gates, they're all out there trying to save the planet. And out of this is going to come the persecution too, because what a Catholic who would insist on something like sticking to the church's teaching against abortion and contraception and gay marriage, well, you're a hater, you see? You're killing people. You're killing children in Africa. And the mob is going to turn against traditional Catholics very quickly and very easily. That, again, is what this is all about, because they have taken Francis, our Pope, and they put him on their side. So we can't even have recourse. We can't even be religious, conscientious objectors anymore to what's happening. Because Francis is going to say, off with their heads, all of them. They're rigid. They're Pharisaical, these traditional Catholics. They're not mine. They're not Catholic. You see what's coming? And it's been coming for a long time. It's not just Francis. He's just the closer. Catholic moral teaching looks preposterous without the incarnation of Jesus Christ front and center all the time. Without death, judgment, heaven and hell, none of this makes sense. Go ahead, contracept. Do what you want. What's it to you? What are you trying to push your religion on me for? If these things don't matter, then we sound insane. If we're not on this earth to save our souls and to help others save their souls, if the point and purpose of us coming into the world was not to know, love, and serve God, then we make no sense, you see? And see, the Church of Vatican II stopped preaching all of these things for a reason. This is why you never hear about mortal sin from the pulpit anymore. You see? Because it's not about spirituality. It's not about the things of the soul. These things which were the bedrock of Western civilization. Belief in the faith. Regulating ourselves, following the code, following natural law, following the moral theology of the church. The bedrock of Western civilization. Nobody told us we had to do these things. We did these things because we believed that God created us for a reason. And that we had to share that good news with the entire world, just like Christ told us to do. And see, the fruits of that belief, of that faith, they were unbelievably awesome. You see, the Catholic Church cared about the marginalized who live in poverty and hunger and ignorance throughout the world. She cared about them so much that she sent her best and her brightest, her most highly educated priests and bishops and nuns all over the world to reach out to them, to establish missions, hospitals, orphanages, schools, cities, entire civilizations on the far-flung peripheries of the wilderness. For heaven's sake, your holiness. When you act as though the Catholic Church before you came along never had any concern for people living on the peripheries. Look around the world. I'm from the United States of America. Most of the cities on the East and West Coasts are Catholic missions because the Catholic Church sent people over here out of love to convert them and to help them and to feed them and to clothe them and to help them live good lives as they served Christ, served God, and saved their souls. Nobody cared more about the poor of the world than the Catholic Church did. And we have the historical records of hospitals, orphanages, missions, all over the world to prove it, before they got torn down by the secularist New World Order that replaced the Catholic Church in Christendom. And see, everything the Catholic Church did was based on Jesus Christ's order, on his commission to go out, convert, baptize all nations. The very commission that the Church of Accompaniment has completely abandoned. They're not interested in converting anyone. They're going to accompany everyone somewhere. And at this point, it looks like they're accompanying most of the world to hell. And maybe that's the point. Because now Christendom, the greatest civilization in the world, the greatest civilization history ever knew, has been replaced by this Masonic brotherhood of man with its perpetual wars, war on everything, not just countries, but war on marriage, war on morality, war on the unborn, war on the gender that we came into this world that God gave us as men and women. Even war on that has replaced the mighty Catholic Church. And now all the Catholic churches, the Catholic hospitals, the Catholic schools, they're all fading away. They're all gone. As the Church of Vatican II, the Catholics of Vatican II, contracept and abort at nearly the same rate now as everyone else.
A very big goal that you have stated, get 120 million women voluntary contraception by 2020. You're a Roman Catholic. You were raised Roman Catholic, and some have said it runs counter to that. How do you wrestle with that?
So I grew up Catholic. I went through K through 12 through Catholic school. I'm still a practicing Catholic, but over 90% of Catholic women in the United States use contraceptives because we believe in them. I use them.
This is what happens to Catholics when you remove all of that. They were told to pray like Protestants, and now guess what? They've become Protestants, only worse. So you see what has to happen, friends. We need to focus ourselves on what traditional Catholicism is really all about. We need to move away from this idea that it's about liturgical preferences and pretty music and nice-smelling chant, because that's not what traditional Catholicism is all about. The fight for the old Mass was the touchstone of a Catholic counter-revolution against the New World Order, the ape of God, the reign of Antichrist. Maybe not the Antichrist, but an Antichrist. Traditional Catholicism now is the only thing that stands between that and us. And traditional Catholicism, for the sake not just of us, but for the sake of the entire world, must be restored now. From the liturgy to the catechisms to everything else. So that means we need to do whatever we possibly can to bring it back. Unite the clans, yes. Stop fighting with each other, yes. Get behind men who we maybe don't agree with 100%, but men who are in the church, who know something's wrong, and who have the power then to do something about this from within the church. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to just hand over all the Catholic buildings to the enemy, to the devils of the New World Order. I'm going to fight for all of it through the institution of the church. I'm not going anywhere, and I don't think you are either. You wouldn't be watching this program. So we need to get behind the men who can do something about this. Men like Cardinal Raymond Burke. Men like Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who, as far as I'm concerned, is the new John Fisher, the way he's been fighting back now from within the church. He's not running off to the Orthodox, not taking. He's staying and he's fighting. He's showing us what we need to do. The same, of course, with Bishop Athanasius Schneider, our dear, dear friend. So we need to stand with these men and anyone else we know who knows what's happening here in the church today, in the world today, which is nothing more than a radical push to integrate the Church of Vatican II into the New World Order. That's all it is. And that's why they had to get rid of the Latin Mass. They had to get rid of anything that made the church special. Even the language made Catholics stand out. Get rid of it all. Get it out of the way. You see, this was the agenda from the start, and that agenda is Freemasonic to the core, friends. This is all part of the Freemasonic secret society war against the kingship of Christ. Now, this is New Year's. I don't know about you, but I'm not giving up. I'm more fired up than I've ever been right now. Because thanks be to God, His grace is still evident to us in our friends and allies all around the world, in those neo-Catholics, former neo-Catholics who are waking up all around the world. Good guys, journalists, activists, heavy hitters. They're awake and they're fighting back. And we stand with them. And more of them are waking up every day, so don't lose hope. Of course, there are a few holdouts, of course. Poor old George Weigel hasn't quite given up yet. He's invested his whole career in the neo-Catholic thing. I guess I can sort of sympathize. He hasn't quite given up yet. He really recently published an article in the National Catholic Register warning us to beware of Catholic blogosphere. And I'm assuming he means the traditional Catholic blogosphere. Beware of that and look no further than his own byline in the NCR or in some of the other outlets that are directly related to George's byline. Look to that for the news and information that you're going to need in 2020. Now, sure, some folks in the blogosphere are more or less hiding their own Easter eggs. I get that. But surely Mr. Weigel's not talking about them. He must realize that their influence is completely negligible. So who is he talking about? I don't know. He leaves it open. And the websites that he recommends are fine as far as they go, but what about the ones that George Weigel does not recommend? What about, for example, LifeSite News? It doesn't even get an honorable mention from Mr. Weigel, even though those guys have been defending traditional Catholic moral theology 24/7 from here to the Vatican and back again constantly for over the past 10 years. How about the Lepanto Institute in Rome? How about Church Militant? How about the TFP websites, the Angelus? Nothing, George? Father Z? Nothing. Steve Skojak, Taylor Marshall, these guys got nothing to offer, George. And yet here's you more or less admitting that the whole thing, that the wheels are coming off the entire thing from Second Vatican Council era forward. Here's George.
I just spent a month in Poland, where I teach every July, and the Polish Church is really wrestling with the fact that, as I have put it to senior Polish churchmen, 40 years from now, Poles are not going to answer the question, why are you a Catholic, by saying, because I'm Polish. Mm-hmm. That just does not work under these 21st century cultural conditions. So that's why it's so important that in what John Paul II called the new evangelization, the Church has rediscovered the fact that everyone is a missionary, right, each of us, and everywhere is mission territory, including the places that look really Catholic. Quebec looked really Catholic 60 years ago. Right. Quebec is the most religiously arid place on the face of the earth between the North Pole and Tierra del Fuego.
Right around the close of the Second Vatican Council, everything went bad, but it's okay because of the new evangelization that John Paul... Are you kidding me, Mr. Weigel? That's what you're just going to say? Well, gee, look at that. Since the time of the Second Vatican Council, the Church has gone to hell. Oh, we can't do anything about it, but thank God we have the new evangelization. You know what that is? That's doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. New evangelization failed, George. It's over. Nobody's talking about it anymore but you and your pals. I don't even know how many pals you have left. You got to stop this, man. You got to join us. You got to get over the anti-traditionalist animus that you guys have, and you got to join the clan, the Catholic clans throughout the whole world who are fighting back. We need your help, man. Stop this. This is more than ridiculous. The traditional Catholic press that you just dismiss, honestly, and that's including a large group now of people who are identifying, groups and organizations who are identifying as traditionalists, powerful people from the Vatican to here in St. Paul, who are now identifying as traditional Catholics, given what they're seeing happening over there. You see, the traditional Catholic press, really, they're not running anyone out of the church. But we are dissuading lots of people from leaving the church each and every day as this failed revolution of Vatican II hemorrhages Catholics in truly epic fashion now. The church is dying since Vatican II. It doesn't do any good not to admit that the emperor is naked. It doesn't help the people. They're beyond scandal now. Don't you see? And so this traditional Catholic press that people like Weigel want to ignore, we're just looking at what's happening like everybody else is doing, and we're admitting what we see. And we're saying we got to do something about it. And for many people, I would say for hundreds of thousands of people, this is the difference between despair, between leaving the church and staying on and fighting, right? You know, a lot of people are scared and they're angry and they're frightened. And they need these voices that I just mentioned to speak up. And so what are we going to do? If we all get together, what exactly are we going to do? I would recommend that we do exactly what Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano said that we must do in a statement of his as perhaps the most important statement of resistance since Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre. And I've got Lefebvre on a high pedestal, as I never stop bragging about the fact that I was confirmed by Archbishop Lefebvre. I got to tell you, Archbishop Vigano is giving Archbishop Lefebvre a run for his money right now. And those of you who say, well, he's part of the Vatican II establishment, stop it. Stop it. Read what he's saying. He's not part of the Vatican II establishment. Those days are over. He was, but he's waking up like everyone else is now. And if you want proof, please just read his December 19th, 2019 letter. Archbishop Vigano issued a statement in which he accuses Francis of heresy. He even uses the word formal heresy. Accuses Francis of setting up a false magisterium. He calls the Novus Ordo Mass the conciliar disaster. And he accuses the Second Vatican Council of having been a gigantic subversive operation, something like the French Revolution. Okay? This is Vigano speaking. We must unite together and face off against the evil one. Now it is our turn, he says, without equivocation, without letting ourselves be driven out of this church, whose legitimate children we are, in which we have the sacred right to feel at home without the hateful horde of Christ's enemies making us feel marginalized, schismatic, and excommunicated. And he goes on to say, together with the Blessed Mother of God, we, the little ones, must work to crush the head of the infernal monster. This is a much longer statement, end quote, much longer statement. Please, please read it, because it tells us exactly what we must do. It tells us that we need to unite the clans against the evil, to keep the faith. We need to resist Francis to his face, and if we find ourselves back in the catacombs for doing it, so be it, and thank God for it, because what that means is that we haven't lost the faith. It means that the revolution failed where we are concerned. I mean, we didn't lose the faith as millions of our co-religionists have over the past 50 years. And that faith that we've kept, if we find ourselves in the catacomb, is going to change history. It always does. It always has. Just the spark of that faith, burning in the catacombs 2,000 years ago, ignited a movement so strong that it dethroned the mad emperors and baptized the mighty Roman Empire, friends. Don't ever forget that. That's how the church got started. And that's how the traditional Catholic Church is going to rise again. This will happen again, with the modernist madmen of Rome also being toppled in the not too distant future, I think. So long as we, the sheep, the little people, as long as we keep the traditional Catholic faith of our fathers, that is going to happen. We have our Lord's word on that. We have our Lady's word on that. Nothing else matters, and nothing ever will. I'm Michael Matt for Remnant TV. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next week.